to the midseason report for the USFFL. We will just be going through where the league is best we can. Obviously, it's a little bit skewed right now with some teams having a bye already, some not. So we have a bunch of teams with 8 games played, others with 7, but we should still be able to glean some interesting points up here. Let me go look at this about where we are at the halfway point. Make sure everything's working here. Looks like it is. Okay. All right. Well, we'll take it from a few different angles. I'm going to start off though with. Why don't we just start off with our league leaders before we go to the team? Let's take a look, just a little spin around the league, and take a look at the players that are performing the best across the league. Who's been surprising? Who hasn't been? Let's see here. Well, no surprise at the top of the list, at the very top, Patrick Mahomes leads the league in passing attempts. As you look at these QBs, pretty sure that Deshaun Watson has only played 7 games. That's right. Justin Herbert has only played 7 games. Chiefs have played 8. Other teams that have had a bye so far: Patriots, Dolphins, Titans, Colts, Texans, Jaguars. So the entirety of the AFC South is squared up at 7. Chargers and Raiders and Broncos in the West. Only the Chiefs have played 8. Then in the NFC East, the only team with the bye so far has been Washington. In the North, the only team without a bye so far are the Bears. Everyone else is at 7. And then the Saints are at 7 in the South. Everybody else has played 8. And out west in the NFC, half the division. Seahawks are at 7, and the Cardinals are at 7. They've had their bye. The Rams and the Niners have not had their bye yet. So keep that in mind, if you can remember all that, going into looking at these leaders here. But nonetheless, Mahomes at the top in attempts, and just behind in completions, just behind Herbert in passing completions. Not too much of a surprise there. But look at the top of the QB rating. There we have Ryan Fitzpatrick with a 107 QB rating, leading the league for Miami. Remember, Miami comes into this at 2-5, yet has the best passer rating of all QBs. An interesting note, too, as you go back up to passing attempts. Take a look at those top 3, all from the AFC West. Mahomes, Herbert, Carr, AFC West dominating in attempts, and also not too much of a surprise. As you look at those cards, Denver obviously is a different sort of team, a little more run-focused. But the other ones are just KC, Chargers, Raiders, all high-flying passing attacks. So it doesn't make for much of a surprise there. Passing TDs. Well, take a look also in the passer rating. Look at Goff. Goff at 98.4. Ahead of Stafford, for example. Otherwise, not many surprises in here. Fitzpatrick and Goff sort of surprise, but Fitzpatrick at the top is really a surprise. So well played there by Tony. On the passing TD side, Mahomes right at the top again with 22. No one else there is a big surprise for me. Scrolling down. Gabriel Davis at the top of receiving average. Not sure how many catches he has. McLaurin, of course, is not too much of a surprise. In second at 17.5. Hard to do in the set. So much flat passing. You sort of have your designated short pass, long pass guys, and that's what we're probably seeing here in the receiving average leaders. Receptions, Keenan Allen well ahead of the second place person, who is Darren Waller, with 80 receptions for Keenan. He had 21 in one game, as a matter of fact, which is the high so far of the year. Receiving TDs, Kelsey has the lead by 2, so he's got got a buffer versus the competition with 8. Get into rushing, we start to see the dominance of Derrick Henry upon this set. And what a card that is. Let's see what this is. Hold on. Stand by, stand by. Henry with 163 attempts, 32 ahead of Dalvin Cook. Remember, Tennessee has just played 7 games, so they have they've already had the bye, and Henry up by 32 in the competition. Rushing average, Henry 7.4, domination. Cook has more TDs, 9 over Henry 7. But look at those rushing yards, 1207 to 760, not even close. Tennessee is atop the AFC South with a 6-1 record. And you can see why there with Derrick Henry's dominance over the league so far. Getting down into the lesser categories, I think some separation there upon kicks from the kickers. Suck up for Tampa, 72 kicking points, 13 ahead of Tyler Bass. It's always interesting to look at sacks. All the other defensive stats are a little bit irrelevant, but sacks matter. What I like to look for here is any multiple players from the same team. So here we have Cleveland with 2, Myles Garrett 8, and Vernon with 5. And then anybody else have 2? Does not look like it. So Cleveland doing a good job there. And Garrett, of course, right along the line. I think Vernon might be on line 2. Not sure. The Strat League manager puts out an all-pro list, which who knows how they put this together. So take it for what it's worth. But looking at the all-pro report, Fitzpatrick does not make the all-pro team despite his high QB rating. Josh Allen up on top, along with Mahomes at this halfway point. Running back, look at Antonio Williams for Buffalo. Interesting. Receivers, Deontay Johnson, Cole Beasley. 2 names you wouldn't automatically think would be up there. Performing really, really well. Tight ends, pretty much as expected. Kelsey and Waller. Who knows how they determine the offensive line. But there they are. And then on the defensive side, Myles Garrett, does make an appearance there for the Browns. Kicker. We have a kicker. They don't do kicker. Interesting. Oh, there it is. Right there. Suckup and Koo from Atlanta. Koo, who had a great year, and Suckup, of course, leading the league in points with 72. So, I mean, if you ask me, what do you take away from that? I mean, to me, the only real takeaway, mostly irrelevant stuff there, just a reflection of the team. But I think Henry's dominance on an individual level is the real highlight among the individual players, for sure. So with that, let's take a look at the standings in let's go division by division. The AFC East, the Bills, 5-3, with a half game up on the Patriots. But you'll see here that the 2 have faced each other once, and New England got the better of Buffalo in that one, 25-15. So, of course, they'll meet again. After that, the Dolphins are a bit behind and have some work to do. The Jets hard luck at 0-8. Certainly a hard luck loss this past week versus KC. It's interesting, just looking through some of the stats. The Jets currently the only winless team, but they have some pretty interesting positive stats on their side of how Donnie's been coaching this team. The Jets are, very interestingly, the best in the league at third down short yardage defense. Only 8 of 18 have been converted against the Jets. And notably, fourth down, only 2 of 6. 2 of 6. Where for the league, you're at about 60%. So combined, Donnie is 10 for 24. And usually what that means is a lot of good calls by the defense, guessing run or pass. So doing a lot of things right, obviously hampered by a very tough set of cards for these Jets. Let's take a look out at the Jets' schedule. Got the Pats coming up. The Pats are offensively inflicted, I would say, with the QB cards, and it's fantastic. They have a above 500 record, and you can squeak out 10 wins with this Patriots team. It says a lot about Dennis, but nonetheless, because of the weakness of the offense, I mean, the Jets may have a chance there. Face the Chargers the week after. Chargers very similar team to the Chiefs, just slightly special teams is where the Chargers really fall off versus the Chiefs more than any other area, and the Jets gave the Chiefs a run for their money, so you can look at that one. Miami certainly in play. Vegas also structured a lot like the Raiders, a lot like the Chargers and the Chiefs. So Donnie can hang with the Chiefs, can hang with the Raiders. Seattle might be a tougher one. Los Angeles NFC, a tougher one, and we'll get into why on the Rams here shortly. Cleveland probably a tougher one too, and then face New England again. So I would say some opportunities for picking up that first win are in this next month for the Jets. Maybe they can squeak a couple wins out. But for the most part, you say the Bills are not in command of the division, but they have a decisive edge, half-game lead, and the current tiebreak over the Pats. In the North, pretty bunched up. And, I think the highest kudos have to go down to Jeff with Cincy, eking out 3 wins so far in 8 tries, and sitting sitting 2 behind the loss column, but still very much in the hunt for the division. Ravens at 4-3, Steelers 4-3. They just played each other. Pittsburgh won 14-13. So early edge to the Steelers there. Cleveland, right behind at 4-4. How has Cleveland done against these top 2 teams so far, Baltimore and Pittsburgh? Loss to Pitt, and then that opening loss where they had that lead. So Cleveland only sitting a half game out, 1 back in the loss column, does have their work cut out for them too, given those key divisional losses. Looking ahead for the Ravens and the Steelers. And their schedule down the stretch. We've got Indy, not an easy one. New England, not an easy one. Tennessee, not an easy one. Pittsburgh, not an easy one. Baltimore has a tough schedule. Dallas, not an easy one. Cleveland, there's Jacksonville. Jacksonville has Minshew and Robinson are a good tandem. Not a very good defense, but Jacksonville, I think, punches a little bit more than its weight. The Giants speaking of punching more than their weight, the Giants have been playing really well. Scott has been playing well. So a tough schedule here for the Ravens. Steelers, Dallas, Cincy, same Jacksonville. And the key game there, Baltimore, Washington. Okay, so Washington has been riddled with injuries. So that's an opportunity there. Buffalo, real tough. So maybe the slightest of edges to Pittsburgh, but the schedule is really not going to be the decisive factor here. Oftentimes it is. Obviously, division mates play very similar schedules. So this is one to watch. Could go either way. Looks like a coin flip. Obviously, the edge as it currently stands sits with Pittsburgh with a key win, 14-13 last week on a 2-point conversion to give Pittsburgh the AFC North edge going into the second half. Speaking of injuries, let's pause there and take a look at that report. You mentioned Washington and all of their injuries. Let's take a look. Yeah, games lost occurring to 2 injuries. Washington, 10. 10 games lost. So they've been hurt. You see these double-digit squads here. Denver, 14. Washington, 10. Green Bay, 13. Tampa Bay, 15. So Tampa has taken the brunt of it, leading the league in games lost at 15. Look at that. Tennessee, we're just about to talk about in the Nfc South, 0. Pittsburgh, 0. Cleveland just 1. The Rams, 0. Looking ahead, peering into the second half, who is going to lose who going forward? Well, KC still without O'Grady. That matters. Marcus Johnson, not a huge loss for Indy. He's the highest number there with 4. Deebo Samuel right here. 3 games for San Fran. That's consequential. Pittsburgh without its right tackle for the next 3. So there's some games lost coming up for the Steelers. But what you don't see in this list are any, other than Deebo Samuel. Oh, there's Will Fuller. He's out for 1 more game there. And there's Dak. They lost him for 2. Okay, so you are seeing some key players out in skill positions. The point I was about to make is there's not many skill positions that are out, but the Prescott loss is obviously huge for Dallas. And let's go back up and take a look at the NFC East again. I guess we'll look at them shortly, but still, jump down. Dallas at 2-6. Pittsburgh gets a Dak-less Dallas this week. Then Minnesota, and I think there's 3 games, right? So then Washington game. So Pittsburgh gets a bit of an edge as we analyzed their schedule a second ago. Not having to face Dak Prescott and instead Andy Dalton. Dalton does not have a bad card, but he's not Dak Prescott. So back to the AFC South. Tennessee, 1 game edge over Indy. Have they faced each other so far this year? I don't know. Let's find out. They have not. They'll face each other 2 out of 3 weeks after this week. 2 out of 3 times these 2 will face each other. Obviously, huge implications for the division in the first half of the second half when they face each other twice. We saw Henry's stats. Let's take a quick look at Tannehill. 82.2. 4% interception clip. 54.5 completion percentage. So Tannehill not really holding up his end of the bargain so far for the Titans, but they've been able to rely on Henry to get it done. See a total yards advantage there, as you'd expect. For a team with 1 loss, I even expect a little bit more than that. And from a turnover perspective, this Tennessee squad, I have a turnover report printed here. I do. Tennessee is +8. Despite the fact that they have 13 giveaways, nobody else in the top 10 has double-digit giveaways. Nobody else in the top 10 of turnover ratio has double-digit giveaways. Tennessee does, but they've taken the ball away a league-leading 21 times. 21 takeaways. 6 fumbles. 15 picks. Can that be right? Yes, it is. 15 interceptions. Wow. In 7 games for the Titans. So, and I'm really curious to see what the success of double teaming has been for these Titans. Go down to defense. 7%? Wow. That's low. Well, I guess it's, yeah, I mean, it's not, I was expecting a huge number. But yeah, 7%. 7%. For getting the picks. The Denver quarterback, Minshew doesn't have high picks. Cousins moderate. Allen moderate to low. Houston low. I think Roethlisberger's moderate. So Burrow is quite low and still threw 2 picks. So getting the interceptions, 21 takeaways for the Titans. Compare that to Indy. Indy's turnover ratio is also in the top 10, plus 4. 12 takeaways, 8 giveaways. Rivers, 81 rating, but 1.6 interception percentage is nice. Not doing it in the other categories, but that's a key stat right there for Indy's success. Running, Jonathan Taylor, not among the league leaders. 2,095 yards given up, 4.8 yards per play. That's a really strong defensive number for the Colts. So if I had to guess, and I don't have all those stats at my fingertips, Indy's doing it with defense. From a points against perspective, 119 in their 7 games. Is anybody even close to that 119? No. Yeah. So that verifies that. Indy's doing it with defense. And they're doing it really well, carrying to a 5-2 record. We'll see. Should be really interesting, these 2 battles coming up. Derrick Henry up against this Indianapolis defense. Who's going to pull it off? Behind the top 2, Houston, 3-4. Playing well. Take a quick look at the scoring comparison for Houston. 4 wins all year, and they're already at 3. Was scheduled to have just 1 win so far, the win against Jacksonville, that actually this team lost in Strat. So the pickups was a win against Tennessee, win against Pittsburgh, and a win against Baltimore. So 3 likely playoff teams have been knocked off by the Texans. The losses have come to KC, Minnesota, Jacksonville, and Green Bay. So not a bad slate of teams to lose to either. So pretty impressive performance, as far as I'm concerned, for these Texans so far. Take a quick peek in on the stats. They're outstatting their opponents, despite the losing record, 27-43 to 25-89. Watson, as we noted before, doing really well, 100.5 rating, no interceptions on the year, 0. Overall, Houston's plus 2 in turnover ratio. The Johnsons have been holding down the fort. Good yards per carry there for David Johnson. Probably seeing a lot of wrong running. So the Texans, with a schedule that's Cleveland, then the Patriots, Detroit, actually tough to beat and keep up with their offense. Indy and Chicago. Indy again, Cincy, and they end with Tennessee. So there's some wins to be had in that mix. Texans could fight for a 500 record, which would be incredible, given the 4 wins that they had during the real NFL season last year. Jacksonville sits at 2-5. Picked up opening win over Indy. Also beat Houston, as we just noted. Going forward, Houston this week with rematch, then Green Bay, Pitt, Cleveland, Minnesota. Before getting back into the division, 3 out of the last 4, other than the Chicago matchup. Jacksonville's scoring comparison. As you know, just 1 win. So already a qualifier there for COY. Are the Jaguars. They'll be in the Coach of the Year tournament. So nice accomplishment there. And they can pick up some more wins from here. Some of these teams that are supposed to do not so well are doing pretty well, and 2 of them are coming out of the Afc South. But overall for the division, difficult for Houston to climb and compete for the top spot, looking up on two division rivals with really good records, Tennessee and Indy. That's likely where the battle will be for the division, and it'll likely be decided the next month. The AFC West, KC 6-2, full 2-game advantage over everybody else in the AFC West. Looking at the schedule going forward, Carolina, divisional against Raiders, then Tampa, another divisional game against Denver, then Miami, then another tough out-of-conference game against New Orleans, Atlanta, and with the Chargers the last week of the season. There's nothing in this KC schedule that suggests that the two teams that are 2 games out are going to catch up, other than the fact that they have to face them both once. So, I mean, obviously it's early enough in the season where you're not going to crown anybody a champion, and there's plenty of pathways for KC to find a way to slip their grip out from the division. But they're the odds-on favorite, no doubt about it. KC's stats: over 3,000 yards, offense and defense, 8 games played here. Turnover ratio is -4. Any other areas of dominance? Not particularly dominating, but Tim's been pretty vocal about the fact that he just has not been as dominant as he'd expect these Chiefs to be this year. Pretty tight in sacks, 10-13. But just a less than 200 yard advantage. But I think the ship will be corrected here. The schedule has some corrected. They're at 6-2. I mean, how much correction do you want? Yes, in real life, the final total was 2 losses for the Chiefs. So Tim has to win out to keep up with the scoring comparison. But I don't see how, even if it falls short of that, how the division's going to be in play. Big advantage here for the Chiefs is their special teams unit. I mean, this really sticks out here. Pringle, 2 scores already. He has a TD on 3. He's brought 2 back. Hardman's brought 1 back. Great special teams. Bucker's strong too. Bucker's only hit 66% of his field goals though. Missed a short one. Missed a couple from 30-39. Doing okay beyond 40, but 10-15 on the year. Casey's in control. After that, it's going to be a fight for second place among the other division rivals. The Raiders sit at 3-4 along with the Chargers. They face each other this week, and I'm the coach of the Chargers, so I face the Raiders this week in what would be a pretty decisive game for that second place spot. It seems to me, and we'll get into conference standings here in a second as we close out the AFC, that if the Raiders or the Chargers want to think about a wild card, it's difficult to call, a week 9 game must win, but it'll go a long way to their playoff chances. Only one of these teams will have a shot, or even a remote shot, at a wild card, and not 2. And if one of them can sweep the other, that would be a pretty big step up to the effort of trying to find a way somehow to get a wild card. The Broncos at 2-5. Are a different team than the rest of the division. All these other, as we talked about before, all the other teams are pass-happy teams. Not so much for the Broncos. Drew Lock does not afford the Broncos that luxury. They've got to rely on the run. And Lindsey and Gordon have been doing it pretty well, 5.9 and 5.0 each. And that's got to keep going. It's got to keep going. You got to rely on that running game. You got to get out to a lead if you're the Broncos. If you're sitting back with Drew Lock, guest pass all the time, that's what happens. 12 picks so far. 5.4 interception percentage. Major issue. Denver is 5th from the bottom in turnover margin with -7 so far. And a big part of that is Drew Lock's passing time. So let's take a look at the conference. Titans on top with that 6-1 record represent the South. Chiefs represent the West. Colts represent the likely first wild card currently. Bills represent the East. Ravens represent the North. So after that, you have your wild card race. And you see at the top of the heap for that final wild card spot are these 3 lost teams, the Patriots and the Steelers. And then after that, you have your large bunch of 4-loss squads. Browns, Texans, Raiders, Chargers. As you get down to 5 losses, Bengals, Broncos, Jags, Dolphins. The Jets at 8, of course. So the Pats and the Steelers have the edge here, but all these 4-loss teams have to be thinking they have a shot, a legitimate shot at an AFC wildcard spot. And that includes the Houston Texans, 3 and 4, be the most interesting among that bunch of 3 and 4 loss squads. Houston secure the second wildcard spot in the AFC. That's a really interesting storyline going into the second half. In the NFC, in the East, the Giants, unlikely leaders, full game up on the Eagles. Have they played each other so far? They have. And Philadelphia won. Have they played each when do they play next? Or have they played each other twice already? No. There it is. 2 weeks from now. Not this week, but next week will be the second matchup between the Giants and the Eagles. In that game, the Giants will have a chance to put measurable space between themselves and the rest of the division. So huge opportunity there for Scott and his Giants to take control, get both hands on the wheel at least in the NFC East when they face the Eagles in 2 weeks. How have the Giants been doing it? Well, they've got a +3 turnover margin. That helps. They have been outgained 27-14 to 28-93. Isn't that interesting? So, despite being outgained, equal field position, upside down on time of possession, those +3 turnovers come in handy. What else comes in handy? Winning third downs, 37 to 33. Okay, that helps. Red zone efficiency, actually behind as well. Sacks can always be a helper. Oh, actually -4 in sacks as well. Yards per play, you said they're outstanding, but yards per play is even at 5.4 to 5.4. Daniel Jones has given up 1 fumble and thrown 4 picks. 86.5 rating. Performing better than you might think. The running game doing really well. Excuse me. With Gallman leading the way. An ugly division, as we noted in the previews, right? And as we all saw for ourselves with our own eyes last season, it's not the prettiest sight. And for a division leader, this isn't the prettiest sight. But hey, 5-3 speaks for itself. And the opportunity that is coming up for the Giants is a big one. Now, the fact that it's an opportunity for the Giants also means it's an opportunity for these 4-4 Eagles. Already have defeated the Giants once. So, with that win in their pocket, a win 2 weeks from now would give the Eagles, assuming they both win this week, which is obviously pretty good. The Eagles are off this week. Giants face the football team. The Eagles have a chance, therefore, to be at the top of the division in 2 weeks. If they can pull off that win in New York. So let's all circle that one. And a few key games to circle here that we've seen so far. These Indianapolis, Tennessee matchups coming up in this next month. And then this Eagles-Giants battle 2 weeks from now. Don't sleep on the football team. Not too far behind. One game out in the loss column. Key matchup with the Giants this week. After that, Detroit, Cincy. Detroit, tough to keep up with their scoring. It will be difficult for Washington to keep up with Detroit's scoring. Cincy, that's the game that Burrow got injured, as I recall. Then Dallas, Pittsburgh's a tough one. San Fran can be a tough one. Seattle, certainly tough. Carolina, it's a game where both can Heineke played in that game. Backup for Carolina played in that game. And close out with Philadelphia. The paths for Washington exist. Are they likely? No. Just not necessarily in the cards for this team. But they have the best defense in the division from a card standpoint. Turn that in. Can you turn that into wins? Certainly can. Hasn't been pretty for Washington so far, being outgained decisively. Yards per play, 5.3 to 4.9. 28% third down efficiency versus 45. In terms of turnovers, Washington's even. Been a revolving door quarterback, as it truly was last year. 3 guys have seen the field so far. Alex Smith is in. He hasn't been giving up the ball. Not even a fumble. He fumbled a lot last year, as I recall. I'm not sure what his fumble stats actually showed up on Strat, but he hasn't given it up so far, and that's key. If you minimize the turnovers here and just play good D, Washington can hang in games. Because a lot of times you're going to have a superior offense on the other side that just is going to have too much offense, and it's going to be difficult to keep up. But other than that, you don't have to finish with 10 wins to win this division. Washington is sort of in the hunt, waiting back. Just taking a quick look again here. Washington beat Philadelphia in week 1. Beat the Giants. There you go. I mean, it's there. It's there. With those wins, Washington has a chance to take a tiebreaker over either of those guys. So the ball's got to bounce a certain way for the football team, but it could happen. Dallas at 2-6. Talked about the Dak Prescott injury already. Facing a tough Pittsburgh team this week. Then traveling to Minnesota, who they're playing tonight in real life, where Dak is also injured. Then Washington, tough one against Baltimore. Cincy, playing tough too. Pretty San Fran squad. And then Philly and the Giants. In those key intra-divisional games so far, Dallas has lost to the Giants. Dallas has lost to Philadelphia. Dallas has lost to Washington. So they're behind. Excuse me. Cowboys have some work to do to catch up. Can they do it? Seems unlikely. Dug themselves a bit of a hole here. And the injury to Dak has obviously contributed to that. Dalton has come in. He's actually thrown better than Dak from a rating perspective. A little bit lower interception percentage. Dak just sitting at 77.5. No runners hitting. So many of these runners in this league are hitting 5 yards per carry. Has not happened so far for Dallas. Dallas has been outstatted less than their division mates, though. So they've been hanging in terms of total yards, but you see they're well behind in yards per play, 5.9 to 5.4. Dallas's turnover margin is -5 so far. In the NFC North, huge lead for the Green Bay Packers, 6-1. I think we talked about this in the NFC North preview show a couple months back, that the Packers seem to have a decisive lead, and that the Lions' offense would be tough to stop or tough for the other ones to keep up with, and that's really looks like that's turned out to be true so far, with the Lions at 3-4, taking second place. Vikes and Bears both with 2 wins. Let's dive into the Packers here. Packers, we noted their injuries. They've been battling through it. Rodgers, 98.4 rating, doing what Rodgers does, 2.3 interception percentage, a little bit elevated for him. Jones, 6.4 yards per carry and 93 carries. No fumbles. Jones has been money. Jamal Williams, not so bad either in his 38 carries, averaging 5.1. Dominating the opponents in yards. Dominating in yards per play, 7.1 to 5.7. We'll talk about these Packers more when we look at the whole conference. Detroit, 7 games so far, 3 wins. Beat Chicago, beat Arizona, and beat Jacksonville. Lost to Green Bay, New Orleans, Detroit, and Indy. So the only divisional loss so far has been to Green Bay, and the only divisional win has been against Detroit. So a lot of division games coming, and here they come this week. Minnesota, and then most of them show up at the end of the schedule. Detroit, Chicago, Green Bay, then Tennessee, then Tampa, Minnesota. So 4 of the last 5 against divisional opponents. Matthew Stafford has a 96.4 efficiency rating. No interceptions on the season. Adrian Peterson averaging 6.5 yards per carry. Getting outstatted 2360 to 3,000. It's a pretty big margin there. The defense is not strong for these Lions. Detroit, in terms of turnovers, where's Detroit? +8. So that's been, I guess, the equalizer for this yardage gap. Has been a +8 turnover margin. Can they keep that up? Can Stafford stay perfect? Obviously, he's not going to stay perfect, but can he keep it real low? That'll be the key. I think the overriding theme, though, with the Lions is that, when you're facing a team that does not have the caliber of offense that they have a very good chance to win those games. And that is true against Chicago, and it's true against Minnesota. Minnesota has an excellent offense, obviously, with their halfback, but there's an edge at quarterback for Stafford over Cousins. And let's take a look at Minnesota. So before doing that, I want to take a quick look at the Detroit scoring comparison. 5 wins on the year, picked up 3 already. Should have 3. So they're on schedule right now. On schedule. Had 3 wins at this point in the season in real life. 3 wins currently. Their other 2 wins came against Washington and Chicago, 2 teams that do not have robust offenses. They lost this coming week to Minnesota 34-20. And the Vikings at 2-5. Let's take a look at that scoring comparison. Won 7 games and had only won 2 through this point in real life. So 2-5 may seem disappointing from the outside looking in, but the reality is the Vikings are on schedule. That schedule gets a little bit tougher to keep up with these next 5 weeks, where 4 out of the next 5 were wins in real life. So Detroit's coming up, then Chicago. They lost to Dallas. They beat Carolina and Jacksonville. That seems like the way the cards are made, that seems like it is a reasonable path here for Minnesota to win 4 out of those 5. In my view, they're slightly undercarded against Detroit. So that may be closer than it appears there, that 14-point win. But they should be able to get past Chicago just due to the offensive cards. And likely would lose to Dallas. I think Dak will be back by then. And then they should have an edge against Carolina, but you see in real life that was a 1-point game, and of course Jesse hasn't playing really well. But those seem plausible, and then of course the Jacksonville win seems plausible as well. Jacksonville and Carolina, both very capable squads, but those are all in the ball. I think it's in the ballpark for Minnesota actually to perform to this schedule. And then after that, you've got Tampa, tough one. Chicago, they lost that game. New Orleans got blown away, and then Detroit again. So, is a run at the Packers in the offing? No, probably not. Could they climb into wild card contention? Yeah, yep. Win 4 out of the next 5 here, and you'll be in the playoff discussion. The Bears 2-6. With Trubisky at quarterback, it's a difficult job to get to 8-8. At this point last year, they had 5 wins. So 3 games behind schedule currently. Got to find 3 more in addition to the 3 they're supposed to win to get to that 8-8 mark, and that's going to be difficult. It's going to be hard. Defense is okay, not more than okay. Those defensive cards, and the offensive cards are challenging. So it might be a tough ride out here for the Bears. Versus the paths of their division mates in the NFC North. In the South, the Atlanta Falcons, 5-3, sitting on top of the division along with the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. These surprise Falcons. They surprised last year, winning the division, ran away with the division last year. And look at this, only won 4 games last year, already above that mark with 5. We're to have won 2 games so far this year, and of course have those 5. So +3 so far on the season. Going into a game against Denver. After that, 2 out of 3 against New Orleans. And then all the Tampa games are left as well. So not an easy road to hoe here at all going forward, having 4 games against New Orleans and Tampa ahead of them. But at 5-3, you're playing with house money at this point. Can you find 5 wins out of these last 8 games? Can you end 5? Can you go over 500 in the second half? Where would you find your wins here? Well, you'd like to think you can get past Denver. Possible. Just the superiority of Ryan's card versus the QB of Denver against Locke's card is pretty significant. So on that basis alone, Atlanta could find a win there. The other AFC West opponents that they need to face, being Vegas and the Chargers, also 2 high-flying offenses, bad defenses. Those, as far as I'm concerned, are kind of coin tosses. Because Atlanta has a good runner. They at least have a run-pass option, where the Chargers certainly don't. So it's possible. I mean, you got the KC game. That's super tough. Gotta find the win against these 3 weaker AFC West opponents. When I say weak, I mean overall team. They're really good offenses. Certainly, the Chargers and Raiders are. Interesting second half coming up for Atlanta. Let's take a quick look at the stats. About even in yards per play. Atlanta has a turnover margin of flat, 0. So playing that even so far. 1.5% interception percentage for Ryan. That's good. And Gurley with a nice 4.9 average. Gurley has a pretty decent card. 5 scores for Julio. Just 25 catches, but 5 scores. As far as sacks are concerned, look at that. 12-2. Interesting. So crushing the opponents in pass rush. That's how the Falcons did it last year. I coached the Falcons last year, and then the secret to the success for the Falcons was the matchups for blitzing, and we blitzed often, all the time, pretty much every down, and it worked out. We're not seeing that quantity here, but we're certainly seeing the margin from Atlanta. Behind Atlanta are 2 teams that are very well carded. Tampa, been fighting injuries. That sits at 5-3. Big game on the docket. Next for them is the New Orleans game. Slightly outstanding opponent so far. Certainly winning the penalty battle decisively. As far as turnovers are concerned, Tampa second in the league, +9. A lot of defensive injuries, though, affected the squad. 206 points against. Not so bad, but not what the Tampa defense is really capable of. Well, the injuries had a lot to do with that. The New Orleans game is obviously a very important one. They face each other in week 1. Tampa lost New Orleans, so a very key game coming up here. Cannot afford a loss against the Saints this week. To lose that tiebreak would be pretty important at this stage. Just looking down New Orleans' schedule, just a little quick schedule compare. We've got San Fran, Atlanta, Denver, Atlanta again, Philly, KC. Both teams face KC. Minnesota and Carolina. There's that KC game for Tampa right there. Otherwise, it's that a tough one here with the Rams. Tough one there with the Rams. Tougher than it looks against Detroit as well. I'm going to give the slight schedule edge here to New Orleans. And they already have the 1-0 lead in head-to-head. So a lot is on the line in this New Orleans-Tampa game. If New Orleans can win that game with a slightly better schedule, they'll end up being the odds-on favorite to win the division, which in real life they did, as I recall. They won the division last year. So the pathway is pretty clear for New Orleans. It's not smooth sailing by any stretch at all. But they have the best path to the division. In fact, they play Atlanta 2 out of 3 weeks. Obviously very important for both those teams' chances. New Orleans should be favored. Better cards all around. Is that the way it's going to work out? Who knows? We'll find out. It'll be fun to watch. Carolina's played a very tough 2-6. By far the least endowed in terms of cards in the division. It's showed so far. 26-61 to 32-25 in yards, getting outgained by more than a half yard play. Not able to find it on 4th downs. Pretty important. Carolina sitting at -2 turnovers. and they've been penalized a lot more than their opponents. That has not helped either. Bridgewater's held up his end of the bargain. You're not going to expect superstardom out of that card, but just 2.8 interceptions, that's fine. 83 rate is good. Not much use of McCaffrey, obviously, with his limited card. And Davis is probably facing a good amount of run calls. Well, more than average. I wouldn't say good amount, but probably more than average. Moving on to the NFC South. Sorry, the NFC West. Look at this. Look at those top two. Seahawks 7-0. Rams 7-1. How are they doing it? First, let's take a look. The Seahawks got off to a very fast start last year, as I recall. Maybe not this fast. They were 6-1. So a 7-0 record. Seattle is just one game ahead of schedule. Ended up finishing 12-4. Didn't feel like they finished 12-4 to me. Felt more like 11-5, 10-6. Just remember that Giants game last year. Some of you might recall this game right here was sort of a signature game for the Seahawks last year. And that one sticks out in my mind. I think it holds too much weight in my mind about the Seahawks squad and how they struggled that day. Because when you look around the other games, it's a pretty impressive performance. This week, they face the Bills. The AFC East leading Bills. So, very interesting test. And then, I think most important to see ahead here is the games with the Rams. Two very impressive teams so far. So, Seattle outgaining the opponents by 800 yards. 6.1 to 4.7 in average. Turnover margin of +3. Seattle is doing an amazing job against the pass. Leading the league, barely, just among the very top in the league of pass yards against, 1479. So that's critical. Rush yards, 639. Leads the league. This team is doing it with defense. Defense is leading the way. The very top of the league in both rushing and passing D. Also interesting, they've only had 15, is that right? 15 trips into the red zone for their opponents. The opponents have gotten into the red zone only 15 times so far this season. Indianapolis is at 17. Baltimore's at 19. The average is well into the 20s. And Seattle's only had to face 15 red zone opportunities for its opponent, keeping its opponent out of scoring territory. And then once they're in there, holding them to 69%. But they're not in there often. Just some great defensive calls coming from Dennis's Seattle squad. Russell Wilson obviously doing pretty well. 104 rating. Can't ask much more than that. 1.1 INT. Chris Carson, a 7.1 average. Certainly looks like a 7-0 team when you look at these stats. Interestingly, Carson's leading in receptions with 22. But their opponent, who they have yet to face this season, 2 games ahead, is the Rams. I'll tell you what, the Rams are pretty impressive too. 29-12 versus 2,200. About a full yard advantage in yards per play. The Rams lead the league in red zone efficiency with that 86%. So doing it on the offensive side, but then also doing it on the defensive side. They lead the league in red zone efficiency defensively at 59. So that margin alone can generate wins. 86-59. Number one in red zone offense, number one in red zone defense. It's going to be a really interesting battle when these Rams face Seahawks. Jared Goff, 98.4. We noted that before, just a 1.2 interception percentage. Cam Akers, Henderson, two good running cards right there. Two very good running cards. And they're running pretty well. Up to 45 receptions. Leads the team by far. Higby with 23. He has a very good card as well. The stats tell a really interesting story about these two teams. These are Super Bowl contenders right here. There's a handful of teams that could come out of the NFC. These two are right in the mix. 49ers at 4-4. Take a look at the scoring comparison. Only won 6 on the year. Had won 4 so far last year, so the team is on schedule. Scheduled to lose the next 2, and that would make sense against Green Bay and New Orleans. Not easy. Beat the Rams in real life. That's going to be tough. The other win in real life came against Arizona. Another game against Seattle at the end of the year, which they narrowly lost. San Fran does not have the guns that the other teams have, offensively or defensively, meaning the other teams being the Seahawks and the Rams. So the thumb is on the scale against San Francisco's chance to come back and compete for this division. Seems unlikely. But doing really well, very healthy total yard lead against opponents, 31-40, 25-17, and a half yard per play average advantage as well. Even in the red zone, in terms of sacks, -6. So a bit of a concern there. The fact is that there's a really good chance for this team to make a run for Coach of the Year with 4 wins so far. And that's likely where the Niners are going to spend a lot of the time strategizing to get into that in that tournament. Cardinals at 2-5. Went 8-8 last year and got off to a good start. So last year they had 5 wins to this point, so 3 behind schedule. Gonna have to make some of these up. Starting with Miami, that could be a pickup. Lost in real life. Face the Dolphins this week. Opportunity there. Beat Buffalo. It'll be tough to match that, but certainly possible. Beat the Giants. Beat the Eagles. Path to 8-8, 6 wins is difficult. So path to get over the schedule and into the COI is a tough one overall, given the current hole that's been dug. What has happened to the Cardinals so far? What do the stats tell us? Being outgained by a little bit more than a half yard per play. That does not help. Committing 11 more penalties than your opponent. That does not help. From a turnover perspective, Arizona is +2, so that hasn't hurt them. 2 picks for Kyler Murray so far, 0.9 interception percentage, and no fumbles lost. So keeping it clean there. Break 6.2 average, very healthy. So go and take a look at the conference. These top 3 teams may appear to be your Super Bowl contenders, but the cards say that Cards say that these two guys down here have a good chance to make a run too. So when you combine cards and current position in the standings, it's really neck and neck among these 5 teams: Seattle, Rams, Packers, Buccaneers, Saints. That's a lot of teams. It should be fun in the NFC. If you think that same sort of methodology and sort of subjectively think about cards and current position in the standings, who's going to come out of the AFC? Who has the best shot? What are those groups? What does that group look like? Well, gotta put Tennessee, gotta keep Kansas City in that mix. Does Indy have the offensive firepower? Can't really compete with these two in terms of offensive firepower on the cards. You see how well Rivers is throwing the ball so far. Bills, I think the Bills are a little bit undercarded, honestly. I think that it's unfortunate, but the Bills have some work cut out for them. They have to sort of get some breaks to overcome some of the card differences versus the Titans and the Chiefs. Certainly the Ravens are right in the mix. Patriots have offensive issues in their cards. Steelers have a good shot. Browns are hampered a bit by Mayfield's card versus the other QBs that are there. So I would say legitimately, these two teams, I think, are your top 2 contenders. You've got to sort of draw a line there where you put the Ravens maybe right below that, Ravens and the Steelers, and then you bring in the Colts and the Bills. I don't know. The Bills seem to have an edge over the Colts in the cards. So maybe if you rejigger that, you might say your top tier: Titans, Chiefs, Ravens, Steelers. One of those teams is going to come out in the AFC North. So whoever comes out, Ravens, Steelers, you join those up with the Titans and the Chiefs, and then you have the Bills just below that. Nonetheless, that is where we are halfway through this USFL season. Hope I didn't drone on too long here. Don't know if they give me the time. No, they don't. Don't know how long we went. Hopefully it's not too long. Hopefully it's entertaining. We will see you out on the field in the second half. Best of luck to everybody. Have a good night.